Salutations, everypup, and welcome to Chapter 11 of The Boy Who Kept Dying by NinjaPandaScholar. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 11 Death Tells a Story. Harry was getting a great deal of enjoyment out of the welcoming feast. Hermione and Ron kept glancing at him worriedly, not sure why he was smiling so broadly. Harry, however, was watching the head table. It was obvious the other professors were very uncomfortable around Professor Osiris, especially Professor Snape, who Dis had sat beside and kept smiling at and trying to engage in conversation. The headmaster seemed even less enthused introducing the new DADA professor than he had Umbridge. But all the students clapped loudly for the handsome, young, and well-dressed professor since they were too far away to feel Death's unique aura. "At least he's nicer to look at than Umbridge," Hermione said with a smile, accompanied by a jealous look from both Ron and Harry. For different reasons, of course.
"I have one last announcement," Dumbledore rumbled out to the hall. "Unfortunately, Professor Binns has recently decided to pass on into the next life unexpectedly. Therefore, I will temporarily be teaching History of Magic until we find a more permanent replacement."
Harry glanced at Dis, and they both shared a knowing look and a laugh. When everyone started heading back to their dormitories after the feast, Harry waved up to the head table. "Dis, come meet my friends!" he called. Harry couldn't stop a laugh when both Snape and Dumbledore's heads whipped around to him so fast they could have whiplash. Det just smiled and strode over to Harry, putting an arm around his shoulders. "Meet Ron, Hermione, and Neville," Harry said, motioning to his nervous friends in front of him that looked like they were going into a fight or flight response.
"Pleased to meet you all. I'm Professor Osiris, as the man with the beard said."
Det offered them his hand. Now that they were getting a full impact of Death's aura at this point, it was a moment before Hermione gathered the courage to reach out and shake Death's hand, surprisingly followed by Neville, then Ron. "This is an old friend of my family's," Harry explained. "He and Sirius were good friends, and he asked Dis to stop by and look out for me this year." "Why didn't Sirius mention you before?" Hermione asked, always the curious type.
"I've been traveling for most of my life and hard to pin down. I only accepted this job after hearing about all the insanity of the last few DA professors."
Death laughed, causing Harry's friends to shiver unconsciously. About that time, Professor Dumbledore walked over, trailed by Snape.
"Ah, I see you know each other,"
Dumbledore said, eye distinctly missing that twinkle, as he pointedly glanced at the arm around Harry's shoulder. "Dis and my mum were friends," Harry smiled, figuring Snape would assume the new professor was a marauder in the making if he said he was friends with his dad. "Sirius asked him to look after me if anything happened to him."
"I don't remember you from school," Snape replied coldly. "I didn't go here. Homeschooled. Did the headmaster not tell you?"
Death answered with a broad smile that affected only Harry positively.
"Besides, I'm obviously much younger than Harry's parents' crew. I was just a kid down the street from when Harry was a baby."
"We should get back. Curfew and all," Neville squeaked out. It seemed his nerves had enough. "Sure. See you in class, Professor." Harry smiled at that and gave Dumbledore and Snape both a nod. "See you in class," Hermione mumbled as she followed the guys quickly out of the Great Hall. It was Thursday before the 6 years Gryffindor and Slytherins had DADA with the new professor. Harry listened raptly to all the rumors and opinions going around the school. It seemed the consensus was that the lessons were just as good and interesting as Lupin's. The professor was definitely hot, and he was undeniably creepy, more so than fake moody, even. Many swore they'd believe he was a Death Eater if he didn't regularly roll up his sleeves to demonstrate something in class. Harry was pretty sure he was showing his unmarked left arm on purpose to put the students a little more at ease. Harry happily sat between Ron and Hermione in their first DADA class of the semester. He couldn't help thinking that this was finally the year when the DADA professor wouldn't try to kill him, and if he did, then he could just bring him back again. Not that Harry actually had strong feelings for the bringing back bit, but it was the principle of the matter.
I've been asking around, and it seems your experience in this subject have been a bit sketchy, to say the least.
Ted smiled at the class, causing a couple students to pale.
I would like to see your comfort levels with some simple and then some more complex spells today. We will start with the Protego Shield spell. I'll pair you off, and one partner will cast mild jinxes, nothing stronger than jelly legs, and the other will shield it. Then, I would like to see where you are with the Patronus charm. I understand that some of you were in a fairly effective study group last year and can cast corporeal ones.
That paired everyone off. Ron and Hermione were together, and Harry, unfortunately, ended up with Malfoy. Harry was pretty certain Death did it on purpose. The professor demonstrated the shield charm with his fake wand and turned them loose to start working. Malfoy was casting jinxes well above jelly legs for Harry to block when Death came around to their group.
5 points from Slytherin for not following directions, Mr. Malfoy.
Death said as he walked up behind Malfoy, causing the boy to shiver.
Good shield, Harry,
Death said as he continued on. Teacher's pet this year, aren't we, Potter? Malfoy sneered. It was worth the look of sheer confusion on Malfoy's face when Harry sighed dramatically and said, Man, I wish. Wouldn't that be great? Death then called the class back together where, after intentionally rolling up his sleeves for the new class to show the lack of a dark mark, he demonstrated the Patronus charm and a large silver Cerberus erupted from his hand. Harry was proud that all the students from Dumbledore's army were able to produce a corporeal Patronus, and also several of the Slytherins. Malfoy was only able to get some silver vapor to Harry's amusement. Overall, Harry felt the class proud. Harry left the class proud of the students he tutored and elated from a good lesson, as everyone else left shivering and feeling uncomfortable. Friday evening, Harry pushed through Death's doorway and crashed onto his couch as he removed his invisibility cloak. I'm so tired, he exclaimed to the room in general as Death looked up from the book he was reading in the armchair.
Hello to you too, Death smirked. Even as a 15-month-old, you greeted me with better manners.
I did? Harry asked, trying to remember back.
Yup. You said in your cute little way, Hello, my name is Harry. Who are you?
I must have grown out of them. Harry grinned over at Death. You've been the most stable influence in my life, so it's probably your fault anyway.
Oh God, what have I done?
Death dramatically exclaimed, dripping one hand over his forehead. Hey, Harry said, sitting up and getting serious. Dumbledore wants me to start coming to his office for some lessons. Something to do with the crap prophecy. Do you know anything about this?
No, I don't. Take your coin. Summon me if you need me,
Death said with a concerned look.
I don't really like his focus on you. If he truly believed you were the only way to kill that abomination, then why hasn't he taken more time to train you and get you ready? Something isn't quite right about his interactions with you.
Any ideas? Death walked over and picked up Harry's invisibility cloak to Harry's confusion.
I think the headmaster has a dangerous obsession with the Deathly Hallows.
The what? Death walked over to the bookcase and pulled out what looked like the first edition of a children's book on the shelf, which he handed to Harry. The front cover was stamped with the gold Tales of Beetle the Bard.
Read the story of the three brothers, please, and let me know what you think.
As Harry read the story, Death watched his expression go from mild curiosity to interest to confusion, and then questioning eyes looked from the invisibility cloak Death was holding to Death himself. Is this actually true? Is my cloak?
It's mostly true. Very overly dramatized, though, and I don't know where the bridge metaphor came from.
Death held up the cloak.
This was a pretty good piece of magic, if I do say so myself.
You made my cloak?
One of your ancestors must have been Ignotus Peverell.
What about the other Hallows? The wand and the stone?
Dumbledore has them both. His wand is the Elder Wand, and the ring on his finger is the Resurrection Stone.
Death mused as he ran the cloak through his fingers. He hadn't held the cloak since he made it centuries ago, and it felt like a friend returned to him.
I need you to be vigilant with this. If the headmaster asks you to meet him and bring your cloak, come to me first and don't give it to him.
He hadn't held the cloak since before he made it centuries ago, and it felt like a friend returned to him.
I need you to be vigilant with this. If the headmaster asks you to meet him and bring your cloak, come to me first and don't give it to him.
What would happen if he got them all? Harry asked, concerned for his friend. What does it mean to be the master of death?
Frankly, not much at all. That was a bit of a liberty taken by the story.
Death smiled with a wry laugh.
It is an actual position, but not achieved by just finding all three objects. I'll need to explain that to you at some point, but I'm not sure you're ready. It has to do with the soul bond we talked about after the Dementors. For now, I'll just tell you that I made the three Hallows for the Peveril brothers after they did a great service for me. I consulted Fate on the gift before I made the items, and she said they would return to me one day through my interactions with someone very important. That's all I feel like I should tell you now, though, or your mum would probably have my head, and it would add even more onto your already overburdened shoulders.
After a minute of studying Death's face, Harry decided, I'll trust you for now, he warned. You know, I don't like being kept in the dock, though, but I will watch out for Dumbledore.
Thank you.
Death handed back the cloak.
This belongs to you.
Harry frowned at an extra note of meaning Death said seemed to infuse that statement with. He figured it had to do with whatever his friend wasn't ready to tell him yet, though. Another thing, Harry smiled. You need to start saying Voldemort. I understand why you don't, but the abomination is a little strong, don't you think?
I'll not glorify that creature with a name,
Death sniffed.
How about I go with the standard you-know-who?
Harry shrugged. Suit yourself, but avoid abomination.
I refuse to call his followers anything besides minions, though. Their name is too disrespectful.
Harry laughed. Please do, and right in front of Malfoy, too.
Imp,
Death laughed as Harry collected his bags off the floor.
Keep me updated on Dumbledore.
Kiss goodnight? Harry asked with a smile and a bat of his eyelashes.
Ouch, demon!
Death laughed and threw a throw pillow at Harry's retreating back. And that's a wrap on chapter 11. I hope you all enjoyed so much. I'm sorry. I know my outros on like my last two videos have been very sing-songy. That's just because I'm always in a sing-songy mood whenever I'm recording podfics. Anyway, please go show the original author, NinjaPandaScholar, some love, and please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments. They make me so happy. Please leave me specifically hate comments, and I'll shout you out in the next video. That being said, shoutouts to Haleo Day, S2V, Mias, and Iyuki Izukami, 5434. Thank you for your hate comments. I appreciate them so much. And that's all for now. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye, Pops.